NPR, as I'm saying it, has lost the plot. So NPR stands for National Public Radio. The idea is that it would represent the views of people in the country and that they would go and do journalism for everyone, ask questions, properly understood journalism. And it's kind of become something else. So very interesting article is an NPR expose. It was written by a 25-year NPR veteran, Uri Berliner. He's an editor there. Definitely not conservative by any stretch of the imagination. I think he references that his mom was like a lesbian feminist or something like that. So the one stat that really was alarming that they started the article with is that in 2011, 26% of listeners described themselves as conservative, 23% as middle of the road, 37% as liberal. In 2023, only 11% described themselves as very or somewhat conservative, 21% as middle of the road, and 67% of listeners said that they are very or somewhat liberal. Now, might not be a shocker to many people who have listened to NPR recently. I think a lot of people actually have stories of, I used to listen to NPR, what happened type of thing. And this guy really gets into the weeds as to really exactly what happened. And as we'll probably talk about, it all centers around, what everyone says. It's Donald Trump. Donald Trump is what really accelerated this push to the left. And for NPR to take things, instead of being curious, they took narratives from the top and said, we're going to cover this story in this way, in a way that's not going to be flattering to Trump, that's not going to benefit his campaign. 4 examples they brought up: the Russia hoax, the Hunter laptop story, the lab leak theory, and then what really was the backbreaker was George Floyd, because it completely changed a lot of internal operating systems as to how they cover news. They became an anti-racist news organization. Race and identity just became paramount to how they cover news, who they hire, what stories they're talking about, even the language they use to talk about stories. I mean, he was talking about different advocacy groups that formed after George Floyd and I mean, I'm going to give you a few examples, but we have MGIPOC, Marginalized Genders and Intersex People of Color Mentorship Program, Mi Gente, Latinx employees at NPR, NPR NOR, Black employees at NPR, Southwest Asians and North Africans at NPR, UMA for Muslim identifying employees, Women, Gender Expansive and Transgender People in Technology throughout public media, Kevre, Jewish Heritage and Culture at NPR, and NPR Pride. I did notice there were no white advocacy organizations. That seemed like the only one really missing. And so the real power quote here is, concerned by the lack of viewpoint diversity, I looked at voter registration for our newsroom. In D.C., where NPR is headquartered and many of us live, I found 87 registered Democrats working in editorial positions and 0 Republicans, none.
I used to go on NPR a lot, more when I was with Family Research Council. They used to be a better format, be more open. But I do think NPR and other institutions are doing itself a disservice by this dividing itself as the way they have.
Right. They were wrong on Russia. They were wrong on Hunter laptop. They were wrong in the lab leak, super wrong in the lab leak. And there was a great line in here. When the word first broke of a mysterious virus in Wuhan, a number of leading virologists immediately suspected it could have leaked from a lab where they were conducting experiments on bat coronaviruses in the city of Wuhan. Like, imagine that.
In defense of the mainstream media, if it wasn't for their bias, there would be no Loop. There would be no Loopcast. There'd be no Daily Signal because of this. So we are their filter for stories that they need to read and cut through all this bias.